The set of The View was buzzing with the usual pre-show energy, a flurry of camera operators adjusting angles, producers checking scripts, and stagehands moving props with military-like precision. The audience was already seated, their chatter filling the studio with a sense of anticipation. But nobody could have predicted the storm that was about to erupt. Jude Law, the British actor renowned for his suave charm and calm demeanor, was scheduled for a routine interview about his latest film. What was meant to be a light-hearted segment quickly spiraled into one of the most shocking live television moments in recent memory. From the moment Law walked onto the set, the energy shifted. The cameras followed his every step, capturing the perfectly tailored suit, the calm confidence in his stride, and the faint, enigmatic smile that had made him a household name. Joy Behar, seated at her usual position with her trademark wry expression, greeted him warmly, though there was a mischievous glint in her eye, an unspoken challenge that hinted this interview might not go according to script. The segment began with the usual pleasantries, with Law speaking about his new film, discussing his character's motivations, and reflecting on the complexities of his craft. He spoke in that smooth, measured British tone that had charmed audiences worldwide. For a moment, the exchange was exactly what producers hoped for, engaging but light, informative without being controversial. But then Behar pivoted, her tone subtly sharp, her words precise. "Jude, do you think celebrities have a responsibility when it comes to speaking out on social issues?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "Or is it just about personal opinion, and the rest of us shouldn't care?" At first, Law's reaction was understated, a polite chuckle, a tilt of the head, a carefully measured reply. "Well, Joy," he said, his voice calm, "I do think responsibility is important, but it's a delicate balance. Not every actor wants, or should want, to be a political spokesperson. Sometimes people just want to enjoy a film without hearing my personal beliefs." Behar raised an eyebrow, not one to let a question go unanswered. But isn't staying silent also a choice? Especially when there are so many urgent issues that people are suffering from. There was a pause, almost imperceptible, but the tension in the studio was palpable. Law's eyes narrowed slightly, and his polite smile faltered. He shifted in his chair, the first sign that his composure was beginning to fray. "Joy, I think you're oversimplifying," he said, his tone calm but carrying an edge. "I'm here to discuss my work, not to debate morality or politics. That's what matters to me, and that's what I came here for." The audience, initially engaged in polite listening, began to stir. Crew members exchanged worried glances. Behar, unfazed, leaned forward even more. "I'm not oversimplifying, Jude. I'm asking a question. You're framing it as something else, but really, it's just a conversation. Surely you can answer honestly." Law's jaw tightened, and his usual serene demeanor gave way to frustration. "Answer honestly? I am answering honestly, but you're twisting my words, Joy. You're trying to put me in a box, to make me represent something I didn't agree to. I don't sit here quietly while that happens." The studio went quiet, the kind of tense silence that makes every word feel like it carries weight beyond itself. The cameras briefly cut to commercial, and backstage producers were whispering frantically, debating whether the interview could continue without devolving further. Meanwhile, Behar leaned back in her chair, a subtle, knowing smile playing on her lips. She sensed she had struck a nerve, and the audience was hanging on, captivated by the tension that had erupted before them. When the cameras returned from commercial, the atmosphere had shifted. Law's posture was stiff, his hands gripping the edge of the desk as if bracing himself for an unseen attack. "I came here to talk about my career, my work, my films," he said, voice rising. "Not to be forced into a debate about something I didn't sign up for. Not to be judged for not taking a stand in the way you or anyone else thinks I should." Behar's laugh, dry and sharp, cut through the tension like a knife. "Oh, Jude, don't act so dramatic. We're just talking here, that's all. Nobody's judging you." Law's eyes flashed, and the calm mask of the sophisticated British actor fell away entirely. "Just talking? No, we are not just talking. You're manipulating the conversation, shaping it into a narrative that isn't mine. I can't sit here and let that happen." The audience gasped audibly. This was no ordinary celebrity interview. This was an open, live confrontation, a collision of personalities where neither side seemed willing to concede. Crew members shifted uncomfortably, some holding their breath, as Law's voice gained volume, tinged with raw frustration. Behar, ever the provocateur, held her ground, leaning slightly forward, a slight smirk on her lips. The exchange continued, each question, each answer adding fuel to the fire. Law's normally precise, controlled gestures became animated, hands waving, eyebrows knitting together, his calm tone occasionally cracking under the strain of pent-up anger. Behar's responses were sharp, incisive, teasing, and unapologetic, challenging Law to defend himself further. The live audience was mesmerized, unable to look away, witnessing a rare and electric collision of star power and fearless journalistic curiosity. By the time the segment neared the point of no return, it was clear that this would not be a typical interview. The tension was thick enough to slice through, and every viewer watching at home could feel the mounting clash. This was the beginning of a confrontation that would dominate headlines and social media for days, an unprecedented, unforgettable moment on live television that neither Law nor Behar would soon forget. The tension in the studio had reached a fever pitch. Jude Law, standing rigid, his hands gripping the edge of the desk like he was bracing against an invisible storm, was a man transformed. The calm, composed actor that fans knew from red carpets and film premieres had vanished, replaced by someone bristling with frustration and raw emotion. Joy Behar, for her part, remained in her chair, her wry smile and unwavering gaze a calm contrast to the storm swirling in front of her. Jude, Behar said evenly, leaning forward slightly, her tone measured but provocative, "You're taking this way too personally. I asked a simple question, that's all. You don't have to make it a battle." Law's head snapped toward her, eyes flashing. "Way too personally. This isn't personal, it's about being misrepresented in front of millions of people. You're spinning this narrative that I didn't agree to, and it's not just annoying, it's infuriating. I came here to discuss my work, not to justify myself politically or morally to a room full of strangers." The audience shifted in their seats, the murmur of whispers rising as they processed the intensity of what was unfolding before them. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every sharp gesture, every flare of emotion. Producers backstage were frantically signaling to each other, debating whether to cut the segment or let it ride, unsure if this confrontation could be contained. Social media was already exploding. Clips of Jude Law's tense expressions, his gesturing hands, and the piercing back and forth with Behar were being posted, retweeted, and commented on in real time. Behar, undeterred, leaned back slightly, folding her hands on the desk. "Jude, you're British, you're supposed to have impeccable manners, charm, and composure. Where's all that now?" Her voice carried both a teasing edge and a subtle challenge. Law let out a bitter, incredulous laugh that was devoid of humor. "Control. You think this is about control? I have control over my work, my projects, my career. But I do not have control over being twisted into a symbol of something I'm not." He leaned closer, his voice dropping slightly, intense and urgent. "And you are enjoying this, aren't you? You love seeing me cornered." Behar shook her head slowly, her expression calm. "I don't enjoy anyone being upset, Jude. I just want honesty. You're clearly upset. Admit it." Law's hands balled into fists as he slammed them lightly on the desk, the sound echoing across the studio. "Yes, I am upset. I didn't come here to fight. I came to talk about my craft, my career, my films. But now I'm being forced into a debate I didn't sign up for, in front of millions of viewers. I cannot, and will not, let that happen." The tension was unbearable. Even the crew members, who were used to high-profile celebrity interviews, exchanged worried glances. Some leaned closer to the monitors, others whispered under their breaths. Every viewer at home could feel the energy, every pause thick with anticipation, every gesture amplified by the cameras. This was no ordinary talk show segment, it was an unfiltered confrontation, raw and electric. Behar tilted her head slightly, her eyes steady. "You're overreacting, Jude. Calm down. We're just having a conversation." "That's it." Law's voice cracked as he stood abruptly, the chair behind him scraping loudly against the floor, startling the audience and the crew. His usual poise was gone, replaced by visible frustration that no one could ignore. "No, this isn't just a conversation. You're trying to turn me into something I'm not, and I refuse to let that happen on live television. I will not participate in this." He stormed toward the exit, his movements sharp and decisive. The audience gasped audibly, some clapped nervously, some whispered in disbelief, and the cameras swiveled to follow the unfolding drama. Backstage, assistants rushed to intercept him, but Law was already past the point of restraint. He continued pacing, muttering under his breath, replaying the words, the tone, and the insinuations in his mind. Behar, now alone at the desk, shook her head with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. "Well," she said softly, almost to herself, "that was intense." She smiled faintly, knowing she had witnessed, and helped create, an unforgettable moment in live television history. Within hours, the story had exploded online. Clips of Jude Law's outburst circulated across social media platforms, news outlets dissected every line, and fans worldwide debated the clash. Some sympathized with Law's frustration, applauding his refusal to be boxed into narratives he didn't agree with. Others praised Behar's tenacity and unflinching questioning. Memes were born, hashtags trended, and the phrase, "Jude Law rages on The View," became a viral sensation. Yet beneath the spectacle, there was a strange sense of awe. Rarely had a daytime talk show hosted such unfiltered emotion from a Hollywood star. Law's confrontation was not just an outburst, it was a declaration. He refused to be framed or forced into narratives that weren't his own. He demanded respect for his work, his choices, and his autonomy. And in doing so, he created a television moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and remembered for years to come. By the end of the day, both Jude Law and Joy Behar had emerged as central figures in a legendary live television clash. Law, for his unfiltered rage and refusal to be misrepresented; Behar, for her fearless, unwavering persistence in questioning him. The View had hosted what many would call one of the most dramatic, unforgettable celebrity interviews in history, leaving audiences stunned, engaged, and endlessly talking about it long after the cameras stopped rolling.